Let's welcome, ladies and gentlemen, make some noise for the one and only, the truth.
Oh,
how are you?
What's up?
I'm good, man. I'm good. How are you?
You look great.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you. I'm trying to be like you, man. I'm just trying to be like you.
I wish my IG live was as well produced as yours is.
I'm just trying, man. You know, I went to school in Hollywood. We have to use that knowledge somewhere.
What's up, Book?
I'm good, man. Thank you so much for taking time out to be on this show.
Oh, yeah. You already know. You family.
Yeah. Family for life, man.
We got to do this.
Yes. There's so many things to talk about today.
Yeah.
One, we're going to put perspective to, I'm Nigerian, I live in America. So yeah. I can empathize. I can only empathize so much, you know? So you're going to put some perspective to that. And we're going to talk about your music. But basically, Bouqui'S Place is really about the grit and the grind. It's not about the glam or the glitz. It's about ordinary people in their ordinary lives doing extraordinary things, giving people no excuses. You know, you bring your own dream because this is what people do. They have a dream in their heart and they take it, compare it to the true finished product. And in their minds, they fall short. They're like, I can never be like the truth, man. You know, but you don't see when, you know, the truth is grinding. They didn't see all the seeds that you've sown, you know. So we're gonna start from the beginning where you were born, and then we'll proceed. It's a free flow. It's a free flow. You tell us your history, we pick it up and piggyback on that.
For sure. Emanuel Lee Lambert Jr. That's what my mama and my daddy named me. I go by the truth. I grew up in Philadelphia, born and raised like Will Smith. In fact, Will Smith and I went to the same exact high school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And, but just recently made a move that I would have never thought that I would make and moved to the South. So we now live in Greenville, South Carolina. And it's been amazing. It has been absolutely amazing. We really, really love it out here. What else is there? I'm the husband of one beautiful wife. We've been married. It'll be 18 years next month. We've been together 24 years, something like that. Yeah. More than half of both of our lives we've been together. So I love being married. I actually like my wife, and my wife likes me. And that makes it a fun relationship.
How did you meet her?
Whose version do you want, mine or hers?
Is she there?
No, she's not here.
Okay.
But we met in church. I'm not going to give the details because we differ on the details. I would say that she was sweating me, but you know, I had to let her. But yeah, we met at church. We went to the same church as teenagers, and she basically was really like outside of my circle. I'm a PK. I'm an artist. Have been for a long time, so I've always been kind of part of the cool kids, even in church, and you know, the clique, and you know, the cool kids. That with that comes the girls. Like it's like a whole thing.
The territory.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying. And my wife, she was very much like on the outside of the circle. She like stayed to herself. She just came and you just saw her every week sitting up front, singing praise and worship, hands lifted with a friend of hers, a mutual friend. Taking notes. And then a mutual friend of ours, her name was Stephanie. You know, she basically was, her and Stephanie kind of, that was her crew. She just had one solid friend, basically. She had other friends, but you know, that one solid Christian friend, Stephanie was there for her. And they both did that. We showed up every week. We sat in the back. They sat all the way up front. We dipped out, went to the corner store. They was locked in on praise and worship. It's that kind of deal. So, but at some point, I took notice of her, and the thing that the fact that she was kind of on the outside and kind of her own person, and the fact that she clearly loved God and she was beautiful. All of that began to really stand out to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I actually stepped to her one day after a concert. She was there. Well, it wasn't quite a concert. It was like singles ministry, and I rapped. And then afterwards, I asked her for a phone number. We exchanged numbers, and that the rest is kind of history. So yeah. But yeah, so been married 18 years, had two wonderful, beautiful daughters, Summer and Carlise, and that's it. Husband, daddy, artist. I travel the world for a living, preaching, doing apologetics, teaching, performing, creating, recording. I love my life. Wouldn't trade it for the world. I really do. I really love my life. It's a lot of fun. Drake has a line. He says, "I promise you, it is as fun as it looks." And that's how I feel a lot of times. We have a lot of fun. Obviously, there are burdens that we carry because there's a responsibility that comes with what we do also. So there's the weight of responsibility that keeps us sober-minded. But at the same time, that's not to discount the fact that I'm enjoying the journey. And if there's anything that I would say to people, it's enjoy the journey. We're super destination oriented. I feel like we're that way even in our faith, even as Christians. Everything is about heaven, and it's like obviously heaven has its place. There's an entire book.
But what about now? Yeah,
but
in the moment, be present. Yeah,
be present, be in the moment. Yeah, enjoy the journey, capitalize, leverage, make the most of the moment that we're in. And it's interesting that you see that trait in us even as kids, right? Because what is the famous line that every kid says, in the back seat of the car on the ride from one place to another?
When do we get there? Are we there yet?
It is in our DNA. Even as infants, we are so preoccupied with the destination that we miss the journey. And so when I say I'm enjoying it, man, it doesn't mean that everything is all good always. What it does mean is that I'm grateful for kind of every layer that I see the beauty kind of in every aspect. I see the beauty in the muted tones and the pastels, because I understand how once you weave those two things together, it will create a beautiful tapestry. Yeah. So enjoy the journey. All right, I'm gonna shut up and then let you talk. But it's not
my interview.
That's my introduction.
You mentioned something that is really key. And what we do here is we give people practical tools on how to get up, on how to balance, on how to, do life, do destiny, get purpose and all that stuff. So we use your life as an example. You said something really key. You said that we are it's really not about the destination, the lessons on the journey. That is the real examination. I want you to tell us how to balance. How do we balance not, hoping too much for the future, because we have to hope for the future. It is a principle of attraction, How do we balance hoping for the future and living in the present without rubbing each scenario or each experience, of what I'm supposed to learn, the lesson I'm supposed to learn?
Yeah, I think by starting with the reality that those two are not at odds, they're not enemies. You know, it's that they complement. Those are not mutually exclusive concepts. In fact, they are complementarian. There's something about the beauty of marrying those two things. You say, I think we even see it in the life of Jesus. I think he was masterful. Jesus was obviously masterful at knowing how to be in the moment, in the present, while anticipating the future. I was thinking the other day. I was talking to somebody actually. This is a little off, but it's right in the same pale. But I was talking to somebody the other day about the character of Christ and how the character of Christ is fascinating, and that Jesus seemed to have the uncanny ability to both have a full view of what will be, while at the same time feel everything that was necessary for him to feel. That's fascinating to me, because if I know what the end will be, it actually makes me dispassionate about the process. You see, so it's like, for example, when Lazarus died, Jesus goes into the city, and he already knows that he's going to resurrect Lazarus to life. He's going to bring him back to life. I can't handle that information. See, if I had that information, I would be cold. I'd be like, come on, I'm good. We good. Don't worry about it. We good.
Anticipation.
Yeah. I'm like, we good. Like Mary, Martha, they come crying. Stop crying. We good. You know, I'm indifferent towards the emotional side of it, because I already know what will be. You see what I mean? I already know what I'm gonna do. But Jesus, I think the beauty of his character is that he was able to be very clear on what would be, which is Lazarus will be raised back to life. While at the same time, the Bible says that when Mary fell before him and cried, that he wept. So he felt everything he was supposed to feel, while at the same time anticipating all that would be. I think that's the balance that we're talking about, right? It's like,
wow. Because as you were speaking, my mind was already racing, because my life, this is how I see the Christian faith, right?
Yeah.
I need faith for everything.
Yeah.
And this analogy always comes to my mind, like watching a football match. If you already know the scores, the anticipation will not be so, because you know that it's 2-4. But then you will still feel, if they're your teams, you're still like, no, even though you know.
It's so true. It's so true. Yes. It's a beautiful analogy. Yes, and that's exactly. And so I think that to find the balance, finding the balance is really predicated upon which way a person leans, right? So I can't say what the balance is for everybody, because it's predicated upon what your bents are, right? So if you're bent more towards the present, like you're so preoccupied with the present, like Martha, that you're not right, that you have no faith for the future, or you have no hope for what will be, or right, then that particular person needs to find a balance differently than the person who's preoccupied with the future. You see, so I think that because the human tendency is for the pendulum to swing far left and far right, you got to kind of know thy own self, and based on whichever way the pendulum swings, you have to then be intentional about bringing yourself back to the middle. You see what I mean? Yeah.
I'm thinking, so with the analogy we both gave now, if I'm supposed to live like it is done, it is finished.
Yeah.
How do I not live complacent? How do I still hope? I mean, faith is the hope of things. Faith is the assurance of things we hope for, right? If I know that God already did it, and I'm just walking it out. I'm working it out by, just being present and going through the journey. So how do I now not become so complacent? So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, of course. I think that's why I was talking to somebody about this the other day too. I think that's the wisdom of God, and
Did you just cough?
Yeah.
Where's my mask? Sanitizer.
You know, I think that's the wisdom of God, and the rewards that He. I think that's the wisdom of God in incentivizing His people with the reward system. You see, so although we know the work is done, although we know we're confident in the fact that our eternal security is in Christ, so we feel solidified there. But then there's something else I think that's at play, which is for on at least five different places in the New Testament alone, the Bible makes reference to these crowns. It makes reference to the Bema seat, a place where there will be a reward ceremony for those who lived lives that were faithful. In fact, the Bible talks about in 1 Corinthians chapter 3, those who did not live faithfully, that they will suffer the loss of reward. I think that God incentivizes. I think that God understands human nature, and He understands that we even though salvation can't be earned, grace obviously cannot be earned, favor cannot be earned, right? There is an element and an aspect of our Christian faith that is very much about earning, and it has all to do with how I live, what I do. And then I think that's from an eternal perspective, but then I think there's something about God wired us where God wired us in a way where we there's the joy of discipline. In other words, there's a level of fulfillment, because fulfillment is a reward in and of itself. You see what I mean? Yeah, there's a level of fulfillment and achievement that it should be the thing that helps to outweigh that
puts you on the straight and narrow.
Yeah, it should outweigh that anything in you that would be complacent with where you are. You see what I mean? Like, complacency is one thing, but the question is, what is the thing that will help us to overcome complacency? I think part of it is achievement. I think it's the fulfillment that comes with having done the hard work and seeing the results. You see what I mean?
Yeah. So it's like, when your daughter does something, you reward them so that they can want to do more.
Yeah.
My boy Naughty actually put my question perfectly. He said, "Remember Naughty Josh?" Naughty,
I gotta see it.
Yeah. He says, "How do we fight the good fight?" Already knowing it's a good. That's a question, but he put it very well. Yeah. So he already answered it anyway.
Yeah. You already. I hope that answer helped. Yeah, God incentivizes our labor. That's what Paul says. I run. That's why there's so much verbiage, so much of the verbiage that's used, and so much of the analogical language that's used in the scriptures to describe the Christian faith, the metaphors that are used to describe what is the nature, the ontology of the Christian faith. Well, it's likened unto that of what a person who is in the military, an athlete. You see, like, and in each of those things, to a fighter, he's fighting the good fight of faith. Paul says, I don't fight as one beating the air. You see, right? There's reward, like that imagery. That imagery necessitates a reward. You see what I mean? It necessitates fulfillment. It necessitates achievement. It naturally you get into a farmer. What farmer do you know puts a seed in the ground? What you're anticipating is the thing that will keep you from becoming complacent. When you understand this, that the thing you're anticipating is of a greater value than whatever fruit complacency will bore. So we'll yield.
I think affliction too. Affliction puts you on your toes.
Affliction Affliction will drive you.
Good Lord. You won't even be able to be complacent. Complacent? Nah. Nah.
Affliction.
You know, I was thinking of this situation that we're all going through and everything. You know, I'm a Nigerian, like I said, like but I'm an Nigerian American, but you are American, African American. I want you to put it in perspective because I feel the pain. I am angry. I am so angry. And before you came on, I was playing your song. Why you so serious? Why you so serious? And then the verse, it was like you just wrote it today.
Yeah,
because it just made a lot of sense and then I thought about my questions when you said there's so many stuff. I don't have time for trivial questions. I need to dust my questions up. What am I asking? I was just like, I need you to shed some light for us so that we can really empathize because this, I don't know.
Yeah. It's interesting. It's we're obviously in a very tough time. There is a national and global angst that is unprecedented and unparalleled, at least in our lifetime. What we're experiencing as a country is unfortunately, something that has never kind of gone away because the spirit of it still lives. It's in the ethos, it's baked into the culture. This racism and inequality and inequity is baked into the culture. And then I think what makes it really difficult is the failure of the perpetrators to repent for the iniquities that are being done. So we're in a really hard spot right now, and are not. We're in a season of confusion. We're not quite certain. People are not quite certain as to what to feel. I would say that even for myself. Mm-hmm. Like, what am I actually to feel? If I don't feel anything, is there something wrong with me? Nobody has, not many have talked about that part of it yet, because that's a real life category that you feel ashamed to say out loud right now. But for some people, they're indifferent towards it, even people of color. And so it's just a very ambivalent time. It's a mixed bag of emotion and and a confusion surrounding what to feel and what to do. So I would say this is kind of what I've been saying. From a Christian perspective, one of the things that this has done for me, because I don't have the natural empathy for social injustice that some of even my Christian counterparts have. I feel it, I see it, and it makes perfect sense to me. I hate it. I think if anything, it's that I feel that I hate it, but I don't have like the deep sadness, that some of even my friends are experiencing. So what I've been doing though, because
why is that though? Why is that?
I don't know. So what I've been doing though is, because what I don't necessarily, just because I don't feel something doesn't mean that doesn't mean it's right because I don't feel it. Like, in other words, the fact that I don't feel it, it may not be healthy. It could be something broken in me, you see? So I want to be sensitive to that. And so what I've been doing is I've been really kind of immersing myself in our history. I've been immersing ourselves in just understanding, going back to a lot of, the civil rights era, and just burying myself in a book I'm reading called Living Faith, and it's about basically social justice and Christianity. It's amazing though. Oh my gosh, I'm getting so much insight. And I think in doing that, it's beginning to invoke those emotions, because a lot of the angst and a lot of the pain for many of us is rooted in, our history. You see what I mean? It's rooted in the 400 years of slavery systems that were designed to, and even though slavery is behind us, there were systems that were established during the times of slavery that were intended to benefit white people and, you know, keep African Americans oppressed. So even when people say, well, slavery is over, I literally had a white man ask me that the other day. Slavery is behind you. What is the problem with black people? Why are they going so crazy? I said, yeah, slavery is behind us, but the systems that were built during the time of slavery, those systems have been preserved. Those systems have been maintained. And so, man, here's where I've been. I've been, number one, fighting for empathy. That's one. That's the first thing I've been doing. If I can be totally honest, I've been fighting. Fighting for empathy. Yeah. I want to feel all that I'm supposed to feel. I don't want to manufacture something that's not intended to be there, but I do want to feel everything I'm supposed to feel at the very least. And I think that the more I kind of immerse myself in the root of what people are feeling right now, the more I'm becoming emotionally acquainted with the sorrow of my people right now. So that's one thing. The second thing is I have been thinking a lot about you know, how to help people work through this time from a Christian perspective. And I think that the one thing that I think is important is, because you have to remember that right now we're in the current climate. Christianity is under fire. It's under fire in the African American community. Christianity has not been welcomed, I would say, over the past few years. There's this growing kind of what's the word I'm looking for? There's this growing animosity even towards Christianity, as it is being understood to be as is understood to be the white man's religion, the religion of our oppressors. You know, as it's kind of, you know, it's synonymous. It's synonymous with colonialization and you know, just an oppression is synonymous with those things. And just where we've been, you know, what Christianity has been represented as sociologically in our culture has just made it very difficult, you know, in a time where people are like, I want to get back to my roots, and Christianity looks like the whitest religion ever, like the religion of our slave masters. We've just been under fire, you know what I mean? Everybody from Charlemagne the God, T.I., you know, D.L. Hughley, they all have been just putting Christianity, the church, on blast. You know what I mean? So the first thing that I think is important for us to do is dispel or debunk some of the myths that kind of fuel some of those faulty notions, or some of that frustration and anger that people have towards our faith. So one of the things I've been saying is that I've been reminding people that, you know, number one, Jesus was a victim of social injustice. I think that's a very important point, and I'm gonna tell you why in a second. But Jesus was a victim of social injustice. He was a victim of injustice from the day of his birth. The day that from the moment in which Jesus Christ was born, his father and mother had to flee to a different region, you know, because of the insecurities, immaturities, and jealousy of Herod. So he was literally, his parents had to fear for his life the day he was born, from the day he was born. And then he, as a Jewish man, he grew up and lived under the thumb of Roman oppression, a government that was oppressive. The Roman government was oppressive. They oppressed the Jewish people. Jesus grew up in that. That was you see, and that same corrupt, oppressive government brutally beat him and executed him as a criminal for crimes he never committed. Wow, this sounds familiar.
Whoa.
Jesus was brutally beaten and executed as a criminal for crimes he never committed. You see?
So could that be a template?
So here's what I love about that. The thing I love about it is it tells us a few things. It tells us that, number one, experientially, Jesus is not far removed from our current plight. Like experience, because sometimes that's the one thing you want to know. You want to know to what degree the person can feel you. You see what I'm saying? I want to know. I know if, like, you know my story. I grew up in a Christian home. You know what I'm saying? Even though I did grow up in the inner city, I grew up in the hood. So that's kind of what gave me a bit of an edge. Mm-hmm. But I grew up in a Christian environment. I didn't grow up gangbanging. I didn't grow up, you see what I mean? I didn't grow up selling. I didn't grow up clubbing. I didn't grow up. So there's a part of me that probably could never connect with the person that has been through that, and the way that another person who has experienced that would be able to. You see what I mean? I'm not saying I can't say we can't connect at all, but I'm just saying it's levels to it.
Angles, perspectives.
Yeah. There's levels to it. To know that a person has been intimately acquainted with something is just very different. And so I think there's a beauty in the fact that Jesus had his life experience is parallel to all who suffer, all who are experiencing injustice, all who are, you see what I mean? I think that's the first thing. The second thing, though, is the Bible says that he's a high priest that is
always touched by the reason of our infirmity.
Oh, so now this makes even more sense.
Mm-hmm.
You see, it's not he's touched by our infirmity based on what he observed when he was here, but based on what he experienced. He felt it.
You know, I had a conversation with a couple of my friends yesterday. I was the only Nigerian. So I was like, I don't mean to sound somehow, but I need to shed some light on this thing for you. I believe there is racism. I see it. They've given it to me. But because I'm from Nigeria, I'm like, I don't even see it.
You're like, this ain't racism.
I choose not to see it. I mean, I go somewhere and I get the look. And then me, I'm always extra.
Like, this is racism?
But you know why?
Yeah.
You know why it is so? I'm from Nigeria, like I said. And I see people of the same tribe being nasty to each other, killing each other, the same skin color, the same tribe.
Xenophobia. You're dealing with xenophobia, ethnocentrism. Yeah.
And I was telling them, I said, I choose to see that bad people are just bad people.
Right.
I will not generalize, because I've seen so many kind people that are in a box today. As a matter of fact, we are all in a box because they probably experienced one bad person. You know what I'm saying? So they just all blacks are liars. They're thieves. Yes, because of one experience. I choose to evolve and elevate my mind beyond all that mediocrity. I believe bad people are bad people. Yes, this thing exists, but I also believe in my power of perspective. If I don't see it, it will not become my reality. The moment it enters into your heart, it enters into your life. And that's why it's called the law of recognition. That's what you keep seeing everywhere, because now it's ingrained in your mind. I choose not to say it. If you do bad to me, you are a bad person and you need Jesus. You know what I'm saying?
So here's what I'll say to that, Boo, because I'm with you. I get where you're coming from. I think, though, that could be the narrative that perpetuates the problem. In other words, I think that could help. I think that works for you personally. I don't think that works if that doesn't work in helping to, at the very least, stem the issue, because I don't think we'll ever solve it.
I'm just sharing my own personal.
Of course. But I do think that because I've been burying myself in this, I've been looking at the heart of Jesus. I've been looking at all the passages of scripture where there's an emphasis on justice, which there's so much more than, even as somebody who went through 8 years of Bible college, there's so, I'm seeing the heart of God differently. I'm like, oh, his heart for the oppressed is different. So if there is a category for the oppressed, there has to be a category for the oppressor. So what I'm saying is that what I think the thing we have to be careful of is not creating false moral equivalencies. In other words, of course, everybody's bad because we're all depraved, all have sinned, right? But the Bible still provides us with categories. The oppressor is a category. First Timothy talks about the slave trader as a category, as evil, right? The Bible classifies that person as evil. So I think that I do think that there's a sense in which, as we have to maintain a certain level of perspective. I don't know if the perspective is to act like it isn't what, like, in other words, act like it's something, to pretend like it's something, to so level the playing field that nobody would ever have to really be held accountable for anything. And so here's the thing, but here's what I know. Here's where I kind of, because I get you, but here's where I kind of like, I land on this. I see how, what was I going to say? Shoot. I forgot just that quick. Dang, I forgot just that quick.
I was talking about my perspective as coming from outside the country. Experiencing bad people, and you were saying...
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Thank you. All right. So I was going to say, people are bad. Not everybody is as bad as they could possibly be. That's the beauty of the fact that we're made in God's image, right? Because we're image bearers. We are depraved, so broken fundamentally, but nobody is as bad as they can possibly be, because at the same time, we're made in the image of God. So, but in this instance, the reason why I mentioned this earlier, and I think it's important to delineate people from systems. You see, because what we're dealing with, and I told somebody this yesterday, I told a whole group of people this yesterday, this is not an issue of black against white per se, as much as it is an issue of African Americans and against a system that has been designed to favor and benefit whites, yes, and blacks. You see, I feel, now granted, the system is made up of people, so it can be a bit circular. You see, right? But the system is not made up of all white people, right? Although there are white people who would seek to preserve the system because the system works in their favor. You see, so I think that I think that's a better way, because in other words, if this is about a system, I think now we can begin to look at, well, who are the people, and in this case, who are the white people that are responsible for holding on to, and like holding on for dear life to this system that they know is only keeping us down. Well, those are the people that now are culpable. You see what I mean? So then that way, I think that that's a healthy perspective, because that way I'm not looking at I live around all white people. I live around all white people.
You know me too. I do.
So I'm like, I had to watch myself like, like the day I started looking at all.
Well, you know what? Let me just say something real quick. As Christians, we have to understand that our nature should be love. And Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you are mine, when you have love for one another. I don't care how the seed was sown. Yes. I don't care when it happened, but this is the only identity you have, love. I don't care if you raise the dead, you speak in tongues. So I'm always guarded against the source. I'm not so concerned. I'm concerned about the effect, because whether we like it or not, let me tell you first, I'm just going to be transparent. I was driving yesterday. Oh, Jesus, I already repented. I was driving, and this white guy pulls up at the red light and looked at me. I wanted to let him see that I was rolling my eyes.
Yeah, like this ain't.
I wanted him to see that. What are you looking for?
Because this ain't the time. This ain't the time.
I was like, oh God, Bouquie, it's not even you. You know?
Yeah,
but it's a seed.
Yes,
it's a seed.
But Book, this is what I'm saying. I'm saying I wouldn't pit one against the other. It is the source and it is the effects. Because if you don't find a source, right? In other words, this is what Jesus dealt with. Jesus always dealt with the root of a problem.
Mm-hmm.
You see, he identified the effects of the problem, but he never left it there. He actually will always go back to, but here's the root. Here's the root of it, right? Which we would say is the human heart. That's really where all of this stems from, right? So I'm saying that it is important to look at the root, because if you look at the history of look at Black history, right?
Mm-hmm.
It was the likes of the Martin Luther Kings, it was Juniors, it was the likes of the Frederick Douglasses, it was the likes of the Nat Turners, it was the likes of the who understood we have to, even Malcolm X, who understood we have to get to the root of this racism. And because if we can't identify what the root of it is, which I would say is a system, everything I just said earlier. Yes. If we don't identify what that root is, we'll never be able to penetrate it. Think about it. Homosexuals, and I'm not here to talk about, my view on homosexuality, but I'm here just to use this as an example. Homosexuals, how in the world do you think they have become what considered to be the minority? Every movie, a token homosexual. Every show, a token homosexual. Laws being passed for equal rights for homosexuals. Marital rights for homosexuals. How do you think that happened? That happened as a result of homosexuals identifying a root problem, something that they deem as a root problem, which was they were being marginalized. They were being ostracized. They fought at the root of it. They fought at the root of the system that was keeping them at bay, holding them down up until that got to where we are now. You see what I mean? Where the homosexual agenda is now baked into it's part of it's woven into the fabric now of pop culture you see? So what I'm saying is that how did they get from A to B? How did we get from where we were to where we are today? Somebody identified the problem at the core and began to war. Now, I don't have that thing in me to do that. I would imagine you or I are probably more similar in that. I'm not bent that way. I'm not like, yeah, and like we are like, I'm not built that way. But I I'm telling you, I'm gonna send you this book. The more you can see from the scriptures, how God is addressing this systemic issue of oppression all throughout the Bible, and inciting his people to fight for and against it, speak up on behalf of the widow, you see what I mean? Defend the weak. But who is my brother? The least of these. There is this, it's not passive for God. This is not a passive issue for God. Now, again, I'm an apologist, so I don't have the thing in me like my brothers that is like, let's go get them. Let's write policy. I don't have that in me. But I have seen the effectiveness of it, but you can't fight the right fight unless you're clear on where the root of the problem lies. So you have to be able to identify, here is our issue. Now, I don't think you live there. See, and I think that's what you're getting at too. People find the root and they live there.
Look for solution. That's exactly where I was going. What you do with a problem is you identify it, you isolate it, you deal with it by bringing the solution. What we do is we stay there and then we don't. In your opinion, going forward, because we have oh my gosh, 7 minutes more. Oh my God. In your opinion, How do you think we can, we can solve this? You have the mic, you have a lot of things, you have a platform. You've been talking about this because last night on Saturday night, you should have seen Wilmington. Wilmington was on fire. I don't know what the climate is in your area. Wilmington was on fire. Dover, they were losing the Dover Mall, and it's just crazy. California is completely, so going forward, what do you think the solution can be? Because what we are doing obviously isn't working.
Well, I wouldn't say that. We don't know what's working. You can't determine what is and isn't working while you're in it. You say, like, when you look at when you look at the Montgomery bus, what was it? Basically, Rosa Parks. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It took a year. Like, they went on strike for a year. You see what I'm saying? Before you saw any effective change. You see what I mean? Like, where we are now is really the fruit of years and years and years of people, in the shadows and in the forefront fighting against social injustice, inequality, etc. And again, this applies to women as well. Like, all this inequality, this ain't just black and white. This is all. That's what your point was earlier. All have sinned, right? But again, it's still systems. Like, what keeps a woman from getting equal pay? That's a system in place. Yeah. Like, you work just as hard, you're just as effective, if not more effective than your male counterpart, but you make less. See, that's a system that needs to be fought against and broken. You see? So I think that it's presumptuous of us to think that there is no effect in what we're doing. In fact,
no, but what I meant was the looting and that's what I'm saying. That's not working, and it's just causing a lot of.
I think
the protest is working.
So.
The parades, but the looting, that's clearly not working.
Looting is really irrelevant, but the rioting has been interesting to me. Martin Luther King said that the language of the unheard is rioting, right? Rioting is the language of the unheard. And what's interesting to me is this, and I wouldn't advocate for this necessarily, but what's interesting is that initially the DA came out and said, we found no criminal, there's no criminal activity. We didn't find anything, right? Because everybody up until that point was just waiting. You got to remember, we're coming on the hills of Ahmaud Arbery, and so there's still tension in the air. But everybody was just sitting back waiting. The DA came out and said, "Can't find anything." That night,
I know.
That night, they went and blew up that precinct. The next day, third-degree murder.
He found something. He was like, "Oops, I didn't look well."
Third-degree murder, and that man was the night before. That man was sitting at home eating popcorn, watching Netflix. After that,
and he had a group of people protecting his house. Cops were protecting his house.
You see, the day after that, they blew up, cut that precinct up. They had that boy in handcuffs.
What?
My point is that, man, it's so tricky. I don't understand all the nuances. I don't claim to know all of what God is saying on this. I do know, though, that we are where we are because we've taken action. I haven't been a part of that. I have not taken action.
No, you have. No, you have. Yes. Let me tell you, I listened to your song today, and you were speaking. That's the platform you have.
For sure. Yeah. Of course, yeah. But I haven't taken action on the ground level with my sleeves rolled up and my picket signs and my policy, trying to affect policy. That's what I mean. So yeah, but you're right. I don't want to minimize the work that we are doing. Yeah. So I think that the way forward, to answer your question, is I think we continue doing what we're doing, minus the looting and even the rioting. I think we continue to use our social media platform. Social media is a game changer. It is the game changer. It is the X factor for our generation of of protest. So I think that we continue doing what we're doing. I think perspective is important. I think in terms of people, we love people, we fight the system. We love people, we fight the system.
Yes.
I think we love the people, we fight the system. We're called to love, and we're even called to love our enemies.
And those that despitefully use us. I'm like, I was trying to tear that part away from the Bible. So
right. Yeah. So we can't roll our eyes at the red light, So we gotta.
No, honestly, I was in my feelings. Listen, man, if you're just joining us, this is Bouqui'S Place. We talk about the grit and the grind, the things that people need to know. We practically equip people with information and things they need to do destiny. And we know that we are in like dire times in this nation right now. And I'm talking particularly about America. I have 2-time Grammy nominee in the house. The truth, and he's been shedding some light. I mean, 1 hour went by so fast. I was like, wait, what?
Come on, you know how it goes.
Yeah. So we're gonna take questions, but I want you to just in case some people are just tuning in, just give us a background. That's my job, right? Let me give you a background. So he's a musician. We all know him. We love him. And we've been talking about police brutality, fighting the system, and what we can do to ensure that we hand the right baton to the next generation so that they see that looting and getting, you should get angry. Even Jesus said, be angry, but don't sin. How do we channel our emotions properly so that our results are fruitful and they work? And he's giving some light. We're gonna take some questions and you think something before it cut off.
I don't know what I was saying, but I do like what you just said.
It starts in the home. That's what happened.
That's what it was. Yeah. Oh, she came back. Let's go. I love it.
Yeah. So you see, the family is supposed to be the bedrock of every society. The thief today, the killer today came from a home, came from a family. So these values that are supposed to be handed to kids in the home, the home is even missing, So how do we even make sure? You can't force people. You have to get married, have a daddy, have a mom. You can't do that. So as a young child now, listening to you, loving your music all these years, but is very angry, is ready to loot, is ready to do what would you tell them?
Yeah, I think the first thing is I would say sometimes we vilify emotions. As Christians particularly, I think we have that tendency to try to hurry up and make a beeline past what we feel, which I think is unhealthy. In fact, I think that the only thing that comes of it is double trauma. Because the experience, whatever made us feel what we feel, is in and of itself traumatic. And then I think it's but it only becomes doubly traumatic when you decide to bottle those emotions and not process them in a healthy way. So I think one of the things, even as we raise our kids, is we have to we have to be certain to not, and as parents, we can really do this. We can minimize what our kids feel. They're just kids. We can minimize what they feel, but I think that as parents, we have a responsibility to affirm their feelings. I preach to myself.
Channel. You're in front of a mirror right now.
I'm in front of a mirror right now. But I think we have to affirm our children's feelings so that they don't feel guilty for feeling. You see how that works? You see, it ends up becoming doubly traumatic because it's now I want to feel, but I'm afraid to feel for fear that I might feel guilty for feeling.
Exactly, I understand perfectly.
You see, like, so you end up in this very toxic cycle, right? So I think that a great place to start is with, hey, if your children are feeling saddened or feeling angry, or you are personally feeling saddened or feeling angry, Ravi Zacharias is the closest person that's ever that's the closest person to me that's ever died. And I've been having to like coach myself through this process Because I've never been here before emotionally, I've had to think about, you know,
how to handle it.
How to handle it. And I've had to think about how to be intentional about not trying to rush past it. That's been the main thing, especially as a man. You see, there's that tendency to want to hurry up and get past it. That's kind of what we were talking about earlier. Let's hurry up and get to the hope scriptures. Let's hurry up and get to the passages about heaven, what will be. Let's hurry up and get to and obviously there's a space for that. But I just think that we have to be careful to not, in our attempt to provide people with perspective and hope, dismiss the raw, real emotions. That's why I said I love what Jesus did. He knew Lazarus would resurrect, yet he wept. He felt, and he, as a man, the Bible says that when Jesus was in the wilderness, in the Garden of Gethsemane, he said to the disciples, "Stay with me, my soul is troubled." Oh,
Jesus!
Jesus said, "I need people right now because my soul is troubled." You see, and so I'm saying that to say that first, with our children, let's affirm their feelings. With ourselves, let's give ourselves permission to grieve through this.
Yes.
To grieve through this and feel what we feel. Okay. Secondly, I would say educate your children. So this morning, again, my daughter has been to, pretty much her first school wasn't predominantly white. It was a good mix. Now, though, that we're in the South, she's in a predominantly white school. So even though they're going to teach Black history, they're not going to teach Black history like they teach white history. And I think there's something about becoming familiar with how your people fit into the story of the world. You see what I'm saying? Like, in other words, a lot of times we don't think of it we may not think of it in that way, but that's essentially what we're doing. Essentially what we're doing is where the more history we teach our children, the more context they have. You see what I mean? So they're not so shocked as stuff is happening. Like, I'm not surprised because I have a context for this. You see?
So that when it happens, I'm not shocked.
Yes. When it happens, I'm not shocked. I'm not indifferent emotionally, but the one emotion that I don't feel is shock. You see?
I'm not expecting it, but if it happens, I go, well, they said it.
I do know. I know that this has been the trend. You see what I mean? Yeah. So I think that, and then also, like, this morning I was teaching my and this is me talking to myself. I just started this morning. I did a little bit when I lived in Philly, but now I'm really feeling the weight of responsibility of really school your daughter on my youngest daughter on, like, African American, the history of the African American. And again, not just for context, not just to know how they fit into the world, how we fit into the world, how we fit into the story of the world, but even to provide them with a point of reference, even to instill confidence. Because the thing about Rosa Parks is, like, that an African American woman that peacefully protested in the way that she did, again, with a certain, they were working from a certain theological framework. They were working from the framework that we're all equal, that all are created equal, and equal as we are made in the image of God. Dr. Martin Luther King, Coretta Scott King, they were working from a certain theological framework. So the more I teach Summer, the more I'm providing her with the theological framework for love. On what basis do we love each other?
Her response.
Yes, but yet her response. Because here's the question. The question is, we assert these things. We assert, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, we assert these ideas like love and equality, and we throw a lot of these terms around. but on what basis? See, I think this is where where things get a little sticky. Think about this. Think about this. And this might be a little bit technical, but think about this. Everybody in the world, even the radical fundamentalist Islamic terrorist, is using the exact same language. Think about that. The fundamentalist, the Christian is using the term love. We need to love each other. The atheistic humanist is using the term love. We need to love each other. There needs to be peace in the world. The Christian is saying we need peace. The atheist is saying we need peace. The Buddhist is saying we need peace. The fundamentalist Islamic terrorist is saying we need peace. Think about this. The means by which you accomplish that, though.
The means is essential.
The means by which you accomplish it, the basis upon which your idea of love and peace is founded is what determines how you think we can actually get there. So for the terrorist, the means by which we accomplish peace is to eviscerate all the infidels, which is all that are not Islamic. You see, what am I saying all this to say? I'm saying all this to say that we're all using the same language, but we all mean something very different by it. So when we say we need more love, we need more peace, we need more cool, but I think as Christians, we have a responsibility to help our young people with understanding on what basis do we love each other. You see what I mean? Right. By what means do we love each other? You see, this is when do we love each other?
To pick and choose when to love.
Who is deserving to be an object of our love? What does love with boundaries look like? You see what I mean? As a Christian, we have the responsibility of dealing with all of these nuances and providing our sons and our daughters and our nieces and our nephews with the theological framework that will really help us to properly inform our understanding of love and peace and unity and equality. Because what is unity? Think about these concepts we keep all throwing around. We keep throwing around these ideas of unity, being unified, but on what basis? Like, what do I have to sacrifice in order for us to be unified? Because in a postmodern relativistic world, the only way we find unity is if I get rid of some of what I believe. You see what I mean?
To learn, yeah.
You see what I mean? You won't let me believe, you won't let me hold my convictions and be in your circle at the same time. So how can we be unified? You see, but we keep throwing the language out there. Be unified, be at peace, love each other. Yeah, but on what basis? You see, so
how do I even love you if you don't want to see me?
If you don't want to see me, if you cut me off because of my, because I believe in God, or because of some of my moral values, or because of my core fundamental beliefs in this, that, or the other, I'm out of your circle on the basis of those things. So I'm saying we have to help our children process these things. You see what I mean? I'm not saying give your 10-year-old everything I'm saying right now.
I know.
I'm giving Summer all of this, but ultimately, the first thing I'm saying is affirm feelings. You feel what you feel for a reason. Sometimes we demonize feelings. But John Mayer said, fear is a friend most misunderstood. I love that line. He says, fear is a friend most misunderstood. Like, what would we do without fear? And I know, like, as a Christian, we're like, no fear, no fear, no fear. Yeah, but what will we actually do without fear? That's something God built into us. In fact, the Bible teaches us to fear him, right? If I don't have fear, how do I know to run from that dog that's running towards me with drool?
It actually even says the fear of God. It's the beginning of wisdom.
It's the beginning of wisdom. You see, like, so what I'm saying, what I'm saying is that affirm those feelings. Those feelings are from God. We have to help our kids, our young people, to know how to channel those emotions. Now, what do I do with that? And that will be my third point. What do I do with what I feel? What do I do with that anger? I love the point that you made. Anger, but sin not. You see what I mean? But sin is not this. It's not a sin to be assertive. Somebody said earlier, didn't Jesus command us to be silent when suffering? Actually, he didn't. In fact, he did the opposite, didn't he? Didn't Jesus express frustration and anger when turning tables? You see what I mean?
Jesus was gangster, though.
and I get what you're saying, though. If you're still watching, I totally understand what you're saying here. But I think that, again, we have to qualify what we mean by that. If you're suffering for righteousness' sake, if you're suffering, because Jesus will oftentimes qualify those statements, is when you suffer on account of me. You see? That's a different kind of suffering than if we're experiencing the suffering at the hands of our oppressors, and there's something that we can do to actually affect change so that we don't have to suffer any longer. You see? Like I think that these are real. Like, this is like we're thankfully, when Paul was writing, one of the things that T.I. said, and Charlemagne, the guy, they were talking about Paul the Apostle, and it was like, see, Paul the Apostle, he told them, he told slaves to obey their masters. He's like, that ain't my God. That ain't my God. You see what I mean? Well, a couple things. Number one, you have to look at all of Paul's writings on this issue of slavery. And 1 Corinthians 7, Paul tells slaves, if you can be, he says, because the whole context is live as you are called. In other words, whatever context you get saved in, stay there, right? So he says, if you are a slave and you come to faith, right? He's like, stay there. But if you can get free, he literally says, by all means, do so.
Necessary, yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because by all means, if you can get free, get free. Ephesians 6, verse 9, Paul, what does he say to man? He says, and masters. So it's not just slaves obey your masters. Literally the very next verse, he says, and masters, treat your slaves with equality. He says, for you ultimately have to stand before your master.
But you know what?
Yeah.
I don't even, in my mind, I don't think that's even applicable, because we're not slaves anymore.
No, that's what I'm going to say. So that's what I'm getting to. So, okay, yes, this is what I'm saying. And then Paul gets to chapter 6, 8, and he says, obey your masters, right? Mm-hmm. But what the goal of Paul there was not to advocate slavery. It was, number one, Paul was an apostle, not an abolitionist. He understood his role. Number two, he understood that if he were to encourage them to revolt, that would actually cause more harm than good. Yeah. Number three, Paul's ultimate goal was to, in as much as he possibly could, foster healthy relationship between slaves and their masters. If you were going to be a slave and you couldn't get out of it, Paul says, obey them so that, and then later, the next verse, he says, masters, treat your slaves with respect. So the goal of Paul is to foster healthy relationship. But he's writing in a context where they had no choice. This is what I'm trying to get at, to the person who said suffer silently. Yeah. What I'm saying is that if you have there are still cultures where that's the case. There's still governmental systems where that is the case. You don't have a choice. You see what I mean? So you can only go but so far. But we are free men and women. And so we don't suffer silently because we don't have to. You see? Yeah. It actually makes more sense for us to do the other things that God tells us to do, which is to fight against. You got it. So that's what I would say to young people, to our children, raising our kids. I would teach them I would affirm their feelings. I would teach them how to channel those emotions, anger, frustration, fear.
Yeah.
How do I channel those in a fruitful way? And then again, I would try to, in as much as possible, help them to understand
Perspective.
perspective, provide them with perspective. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Amazing. Someone said, I'm a young husband. How do I give my children the talk?
The talk?
Yeah.
What is the talk?
He said the talk about, I don't know what he meant. But
I don't know what you mean either. There's a couple of talks.
They talk about, when policemen catch you or they tell you to raise your hands, kneel, do not fight, just if you have some young men listening now because they look up to you, just tell them how to act when law enforcement, try to stop them.
Yeah, I think we can do what, this is the sticky part. We feel like we're doing all that they tell us to do, and we're still ending up in the same place. That's where the anger comes from. You see what I mean? You told us put our hands on the steering wheel, but we have so much footage of you shooting us with our hands on the steering wheel. You ask for our wallet, we go to reach for it, and we get shot for it. So it does get tough. So if that's what you're asking, I do understand like what some of the challenges even to following all the protocol might be. But I live in the South now. It's a different world. So my heart was beating at a different rate when I got pulled over recently. I just got pulled over recently, and I think I did exactly what they tell us to do. I put my hands on the steering wheel. As soon as the police officer came to the window, I did not even roll my window down until he knocked on the window, said, roll your window down. And when he did it, I put my hand at the window, said, okay, I'm rolling my window down with this hand. Put my hand on it, rolled the window down, put my hand back on the steering wheel. He said, can you get license and registration? I said, in order to get my license and registration, I have to dig into my glove compartment to get it, sir. He said, okay, that's fine. It's so sad that we have to go through this. But that's just kind of the world that we live in. In terms of how we have the conversation with our young people, again, I just really started digging in this conversation deeper with my youngest daughter. And for me,
would it have been different? Truth. Would the conversation have been different if it was a boy? If someone was a boy, yeah.
It would be, absolutely. But it just in terms of how I'm having conversation with her, just about because there's a bigger conversation. Again, I think we have to.
Don't freeze.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Did you get a call?
No,
a call came in?
No, my battery's about to die. But I think we have to couch the conversation of police brutality. It has to be couched in the broader conversation of injustice in America, even from the America since its inception. You see, with the Native Americans, and so I think that we have to have I have to have a bigger conversation and bring my daughter into, okay, this is how we got to where we are, right? I think you have to know your child. For me, I have to be careful with the details with my daughter, but because her mind is so photographic. A lot of the images, like I won't let her watch it. Now, some parents have done that. I personally won't allow for my daughter to see it, and she doesn't want to see it because I know it's going to be branded. She won't sleep for 3 months. You see what I mean? So I think that with that, you have to know your child. You see what I mean? I really, because the truth of the matter, they say that social media, experts say social media is a big part of the reason why the suicide rate is as high as it's ever been. It's a big part of why we are more depressed than we've ever been. And it's the reason why we're experiencing more trauma than we've ever experienced. So I'm not an advocate for just because it's the popular thing on social media. It's intended for us to show like that our kids need to be exposed to all that. You see what I mean? I think that you have to know your child. I really do, whether male or female. Because if you have a son that can just get it without you showing him every image of every cop, you know what I'm saying? I think you should. You know, I think you have to know. The Bible says, train up a child in the way they should go. When they get older, they won't depart from it. The Hebrew there literally means, the tense that it holds is, it has to do with following the bent of your children. You see what I mean? Yeah. It's almost like the way the Bible talks about a man dwelling with his wife according to knowledge. You see, in other words, there's a bent there that you have to kind of, it's curvy because women are complicated, complex, not complicated.
You know, your battery's about to die. Your battery's about to die. You don't understand that. I think the battery guys are here.
But I do want to say, I wouldn't say you're complicated. I will say complex, though. But that's the beauty of you. So I'm not saying it as an indictment.
Okay, I will let you slide.
No. And I mean that in serious. I think the beauty of the woman is her complexity. I do. So, but as a man, we have to follow you guys as bents. You see what I'm saying? And I think it's the same for our children. There's a level of sensitivity that we have to who they are, and customize the conversation on the basis, like my conversation. You see what I'm saying? Just because such and such showed them the clip of a police officer holding his knee on a black man until the breath went out of his body. Like, I don't know if that's intended for every 10-year-old to watch.
I don't even want to remember that.
Again, if you have done that, I'm not saying that you were wrong. I'm saying we have to be sensitive to who our children are. And I'd be like, here, you gonna watch this. You gonna learn today. You know what I'm saying? like, I think that could create more problems because it's traumatic. And sometimes it's a lot to absorb. So I think you can have the conversation in a healthy way. Big picture, have the big picture conversation about the big problem first. You know, the problem with, you know, America and what the history of America has been. I think we can distill that down to specifically talking about police brutality and the relationship between African Americans and the white American system. And then kind of the details have to be determined by you on the basis of what you know about your child.
Excellent. Wow. What are you working on? What music are you working on? Where can we find it?
Oh man, I'm working on some amazing stuff right now. I'm doing a joint project with Limo Blaze. We got a joint project together.
It was my boy, yeah. So I'm working on an international project, something I've been wanting to work on for years. And we're actually almost done. We'll be finished in like 2 weeks. Okay. That's exciting. I'm working on a big record. I don't know what the name of it's going to be though. I think I want to call the record, and then I want y'all to chime in for like 2 minutes. I think I want to call this album God. I think I want that to be the name of the album. Okay.
Just God. But it's a super feature heavy album. It's got like Dante Ball working with Travis Green, I got Yolanda Adams on it. I got Todd Delaney on it. I got, I got a lot of the who's who, of gospel music on this record. Kirk, so I'm real excited about that one. So yeah, that's on the music side. I'm working on my book, What Do I Say When They Say? Bite-sized answers to big questions. It's an apologetic book. So make sure y'all are looking for that. And they
want to know if you're signing anyone to NXT next.
Yeah, we just did. We just signed Limo Blaze.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. We just I haven't made the announcement yet, so I guess keep it quiet. That's quiet as you can keep it, but
yeah, on social media.
On social media. But yeah.
Wow, he was the third runner up to my competition, Unstoppable, the one I did in.
I didn't know that. Yeah. Oh, he's super gifted dude.
Amazing.
Super talented.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's my world.
Thank you so much for coming to Bouqui'S place. Thank you so much.